evening, it's 9 p.m. This is the India Development Debate, and tonight on the show we've got a very special topic. For most Indians, tax evasion is the law. No wonder data released by the Income Tax Department today show only 1,08,333 individuals have declared annual income of more than 1 crore rupees for the assessment year 2015-16. Of this, remove the 30,000 odd salaried people whose taxes have already been compulsorily deducted, and the number looks even more squeezed. Remember, the IT return statistics are for the assessment year 2015-16, a year before demonetization and GST came into play. As Finance Minister Arun Jaitley puts it, tax evasion has indeed become a way of life in India. On the India Development Debate tonight, we're facing some of the moot questions before our panel of experts. Why are Indians shying away from paying taxes? Will lower tax rates improve compliance? Does the administration and tax laws also need to be reformed? That's the topic of discussion on the India Development Debate. But first up, Nayantara Rai joins in with a quick analysis on the data that's been put out by the Income Tax Department. Nayantara, only a little over 1 lakh crore-patis in India. What's the data showing? Why is compliance so low?
You know, in India, tax is certainly a three-letter dirty word. So what the Finance Ministry is doing is revealing, and it might be dated records, but wants to reveal the kind of tax chori, the kind of tax evasion and under-reporting of income that exists in the country. So stopping of naming and shaming, it is certainly trying to shame all of those that are supposed to be paying tax. So, you know, we all know what the population of our country is. Now, if you go by the income tax data that has been released, guess how many people earn a crore of rupees? You'll be shocked to know this. Only 18 lakh people say they earn more than a crore. It gets even worse. Only 30,567 people say that they have a salary of more than 1 crore rupees. When it comes to 5 crore rupees, and I'm sure, you know, we all know people who do make 5 crore rupees. There are enough companies and CEOs, etc. out there. Only 1,648 taxpayers have said that they have a salary of more than 5 crore rupees. I could go on and on, but the fact is compliance is a huge problem. Indians are not used to paying tax, and that is going to be the big subject on India Development Debate. And we've also lined up a special interview with the person who has released all of this data, the chairman of the CBDT, Sushil Chandra. We'll be asking tough questions on what it is that the government needs to do to crack down on tax evasion. We're launching a mega campaign tonight against tax chori, and asking everyone to take a pledge to pay their due taxes. This, of course, you know, we don't have to explain to you why this is in the interest of the economy, but once everyone starts paying tax, it's also better for everybody because the tax rates will come lower. And you know, you should also be beware of the fact that the taxman has not been watching you like ever before. There is a burgeoning social media out there, and I'm sorry to put it so crudely, but you'll be a fool to believe that the taxman doesn't know when you're taking a business class flight to, let's say, in Italy, or buying a Louis Vuitton bag in a luxury mall. They have all of that information, and then you underreport your income, or you don't pay the taxes. Is certainly going to prove to be a very foolish thing to do in the coming days with all the kind of technology that exists. So that exciting debate coming up tonight.
Thanks for that, Nayantara, setting the context there for the debate tonight. Joining us on the show is a very special panel. It's indeed a privilege to welcome on the show Sushil Chandra, Chairman of the Central Board of Direct Taxes. Also joining me in the studio, Ketan Dalal, Managing Partner, Catalyst Advisors, LLP, and a fine tax expert. TP Oswal, tax expert, also joins in on the show. And Maithili Bustumat, Consulting Editor of ET Now, joins in as well on the show as a tax-paying citizen and an economist. Let me start with you, Mr. Chandra. While we've seen an over 20% jump in assessees who've declared income in excess of 1 crore rupees, why is compliance so abysmally low?
As you have already said, it is 20% jump from the last year. So this cannot be said that it is absolutely low. Every year the persons who are filing return of income, that the income profile is increasing. And we have put 4 years data in the public domain to explain the behavior pattern, the tax behavior pattern of the assessees.
And I appreciate that fact that you've put the data in the public domain for everyone to see and understand the gravity of the problem. Now, both the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have time and again pointed out that India is largely a tax non-compliance society. But why is it on account of? Some would say that it's largely on account of a complex structure when it comes to taxation. Don't you think so, sir?
No, the tax structure is not complex. FM has really pointed out in the budget speech last year that India is basically a non-tax compliant society, because considering the amount of number of assessees and the number of assessees who are showing income above 1 crore is quite less. Because if you see from this data which we have just released, which is relevant to for financial year 14-15 and the assessment year 15-16, in which the total number of the taxpayers who are showing their income more than 1 crore is only 1.08 lakh. But the number of assessees are increasing every year. If you see that in that particular year the number of assessees were only 4.35 crores, but last year our number of taxpayers increased to 5.28 crores. Besides number of assessees whose tax was deducted at source, but they did not file their returns. So if we include that also, the number of persons who have paid taxes last year was something around 6.26 crores.
Okay, now before I take you to the tax experts, I want to get a word in from Maithili. You know, Maithili, and I will play that clip of the finance minister in just a bit. Finance minister in the last budget said India is largely a tax non-compliant society. When I look at this data, I think you should have added an adjective: hopelessly tax non-compliant society. But you know, in a nation of 1.3 billion people, only 1,08,000 people have declared an income in excess of 1 crore. And this is not just salaried. If you look at the salaried employees, it's only about 30-odd thousand. So remaining only 70,000 people are in the non-salaried category. What explains such a poor and abysmal compliance rate, Maithili?
Well, yes, these numbers are really very dismal reading, and unfortunately that has been the situation all along. There are a number of reasons why we sit a tax uncompliant society. Part of the reason, of course, is that the fact that the tax laws are amazingly complex. It does not make compliance easy. Having said that, those who wish to pay tax will definitely pay tax. So the problem really lies beyond that. The problem lies with the fact that, you know, in our system, there is very little deterrent punishment. Those who don't pay taxes are not really penalized. At the same time, we also have the situation that yes, it is a poor country, which is a poor country. The per capita income is low, and at the same time, as I said, because there is no penalty for non-compliance, it is so easy to evade taxes. In a very complex system, it is possible for people to use various fudges to avoid paying taxes. So for a variety of reasons, partly complexity, partly because there is so little deterrent punishment, there is so little cost to non-compliance, and it is so easy to get away with not paying taxes. It is for all these reasons, and the fact that the tax administration also leaves much to be desired. There is so much that is held up in tax litigation. And let me just give you one figure, Sandeep, because if you look at the numbers that the tax department has put out today, we have only 58 assessees who have a total taxable income of more than 50 crores. At the same time, India has the fourth largest number of billionaires, that is with income net wealth of more than $1 billion. That means we have 101 billionaires whose rupee value net wealth is more than 6,500 crores. Yet when it comes to payment of taxes, for filing of returns, only 58 people declare that they have income of more than 50 crores. So these numbers make very dismal reading, and I think we really need to do a great deal of work to ensure that non-payment of tax is treated as a criminal offence, not only in letter but also in spirit and also in action. Only then will people start paying their taxes.
You know, it's a fair point that you made, the need for strong deterrence, and I will get a word from the CBDT chairman on that. But a quick comment from you, Ketan Dalal. I mean, what do you make of this? In some sense, is it a way of life? You know, it's almost as if people take pride instead of in paying taxes in not paying taxes. What do you attribute this to? Is it, and what can solve this problem? I mean, will deterrence alone help, or do you think there's obviously a need to simplify tax processes as well?
So I think it's a combination of various things, Sandeep. I don't entirely agree with Maithili when she said that you know, there is a need for a criminal kind of thing on the tax thing, because that will frighten taxpayers even more. But I think 3 or 4 reasons I can think of. You know, the first is, as everybody rightly pointed out, there is this mindset of not paying tax. That's number one. Second is, in spite of the fact that tax rates have been coming down, the marginal rate at the highest level is still 35%, which is still high. You are aware of what's happening in the US, and tax rates are getting reduced there, and that's the trend all over the world. Third is, remember that agricultural income is not part of the tax net, so many SHs are out of that. And there is a fourth reason. you know, more than the complexity, I think there is also a fear in the minds of potential taxpayers that they will be hounded if they once file a return. And I think if the tax department can address that fear, then I think many more people will come into the tax. Just one additional point, Sandeep, as Mr. Sushil Chandra pointed out, the figures are of 31st March 15. We are today 2.5 years beyond that. We now have about 6 crore taxpayers as opposed to about 4 crores at that point of time. I think the combined effect of GST and demonetization has also made it difficult for people not to come within the tax net. So I think there is a sort of inbuilt mechanism that is bringing people into the tax net willy-nilly, whether they want it or not. So I think in that sense, I would tend to believe that compliance is definitely increasing.
It's an important point you made, GST and demonetization. That is something that we will debate about. But before I take it back to Mr. Chandra, I do want to play that clip from the finance minister's budget speech last year, where he sort of emphatically stated, why there is such poor tax compliance and set out data. What we have today is actually even more advanced data. But for the benefit of our viewers, I do want to play that small clip from the finance minister's budget speech just earlier this year.
The number of people showing income more than 50 lakhs in the entire country is only 1.72 lakhs. We contrast this that in the last 5 years, more than 1.25 crore cars have been sold. And the number of Indian citizens who traveled abroad either for business or tourism was 2 crores in the year 2015. From all these figures, we can conclude that we are largely a tax non-compliant society. The predominance of cash in our economy makes it possible for people to evade taxes. When too many people evade taxes, the burden of their share falls on those who are honest and tax compliant.
You know, that clip is also important because it also tells you the reaction of people when he said that, there are so many people taking a holiday, so many people buying a car. You get parliamentarians laughing. At one level, it's a cruel joke on the people of this country, actually. So you don't know whether you should laugh at it or sort of, be riled at the state of affairs. But Mr. Chandra, tell us, what can the CBDT do to strike the balance between improving compliance on the one hand and offering a friendly administration to the honest taxpayer? Because like Mr. Dalal pointed out here as well, that there is a case to simplify processes, make it easier from the point of view of taxpayer. How can the CBDT strike that balance?
Income tax department wants to work in absolutely a non-intrusive manner. And the example I will give it to you, that whether it is a filing of return, it is absolutely filed online. 98% returns we are receiving online. The processing is also done absolutely online. And the refund is also being credited after that absolutely in your bank account. Only less than 1%, sometimes it is 0.7%, sometimes it is 0.5% cases are being picked for scrutiny. So I would say that in 99.5% assessees are not required to visit income tax office, and their work is completely done through online. So the department has been a very tax friendly, into all these matters. We have conducted various outreach programs also, and our chief commissioners, our principal commissioners have gone out of the offices. They have tried to explain various provisions to the taxpayers, which has been very widely appreciated. And we also communicate through the media and through the advertisement also the rights and the duties of the taxpayers.
I'm sure steps have been taken, including one that was announced just today of faceless assessment, getting in more technology. But Ketan, I'll comment on that. I mean, a lot more needs to be done. Would you agree to ensure that the tax department is seen as a more friendly administration that incentivizes people to file more returns? Is that something that you think needs to be focused on? Specifically, would you have any suggestions for the government? Mr. Dalal?
Oh, yes, sorry. I thought you were addressing that question. No, I think a couple of things there, Sandeep. I think Mr. Chandra is right in saying that 99% of the people do not need even to visit the tax department. And I think over the period of the last 3 decades that I have been dealing with taxes, certainly things have improved. There's no doubt about it. Things are online, refunds are coming, and the overall attitude has become less adversarial for sure. But I think still a lot more needs to be done. I think couple of things. One is that we must also remember that the 1% who visit the tax department are those who also pay the maximum number of taxes. If you see the overall statistics, you will see that the larger taxpayers, the number of course is very few, but those are contributing a very significant part. I have the numbers somewhere, but I think it's about the top 2,000 SSCs, companies and individuals put together, constitute about 35 or 40% of the tax collection. So we are talking really of the people who interact with the tax department, and when they get into a situation of a lot of litigation, there is a lot of media coverage of all that, it frightens the others. So I think one of the things perhaps that might need to be done is to tone down that rhetoric and make litigation also quicker, much more easily resolved. Litigation drags on for too long in this country, and that frightens people, and that perhaps also impacts the tax base, and it encourages evasion.
Fair point. I'd like to take in a caller because we've kept the phone lines open. This is an emotive issue. I'm sure a large majority of the salaried middle class is upset with these figures and wondering why are they being made the whipping boy, so to say. So we've got a caller coming in. Shailendra Kriplani from Kota in Rajasthan is calling in with a question. Mr. Kriplani, go ahead and ask your question, sir.
Sir, I want to ask that the government is having a higher rate of taxes. Hello?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. At 28% GST on steel and cement-like things which a poor people need to make his houses, plus 33% of income taxes, including the cess, etc. Cannot we lower the taxes? Because we are all having the indirect taxes in full amount. On every liter of petrol, you get 40 rupees. Why not asking for 13 times a return in a GST? Why not the government gives an audit report of it in every newspaper, at least in a quarter or at least in a year?
Okay.
How the government's money is spent. They
Sure.
take road taxes, petrol taxes everywhere. We can't send our children to the government schools. We can't send our elders or ourselves to government hospitals. What the common man is getting in return. Why not the government starts a pilot project?
Sure.
By
Point taken, sir.
even a 1% that the money that the government is taking as all over the taxes
Right.
can be handled by the private agencies.
Sure. Mr. Kriplani, if I may interrupt you, Mr. Kriplani, I've got your question. We want to take a few more call-ins as well. Let me pose this question to the panel. I'm sure you'll get an answer. I think there are two questions here. One is, has the state failed its citizens? The point that he said, what about accountability of services? What about the quality of infrastructure? Has the state failed its citizens? And does that to some extent explain poor compliance? And secondly, his point on, why do we pay so much taxes, 33% income tax? Why are tax rates so high in this country? How do you respond to both of that, Maithili?
Well, it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. Yes, we can say the state has failed us in many ways, but one of the reasons why the state has failed us, frankly, is because people do not pay their taxes. Ultimately, if you want the state to deliver, build proper roads, have bridges, have a better law and order, the state needs money. And if our tax to GDP ratio, Mr. Kriplani said we are very highly taxed, but the fact is that our tax to GDP ratio overall is about 5 percentage points less than it is in any of the comparable countries of our level of income. We are amongst the lowest ratios in all the BRICS. So I do not think that as a country as a whole, we are undertaxed. The problem is that those who pay their taxes have to carry an unduly heavy burden, because a large section of the society, particularly those who are not the salaried section, do not pay their taxes honestly. So it is exactly this that Mr. Jaitley was referring to. Our tax rates could come down if more people paid their taxes. So that really is the first problem. As for the second issue, are we overly taxed because the GST rate of 28% is very high? My answer to that would also be no, because the GST is on the value added, And if you see what the government has done, they have broadly tried to ensure that the rate would be tax neutral, in the sense that it would not be more than what it was under the earlier system. So I do not think that we are overtaxed, and even at the rate of 33%, if you look at the number of exemptions that are given, the net effective rate of tax comes to much less. So I do not agree with Mr. Kripalani on either of those two scores. Yes, we must hold the government accountable, but only after we ourselves have done our duty and given to Caesar what is demanded of Caesar.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got TP Ostwal joining us here in the studio as well. Mr. Ostwal, it's been a fascinating debate so far. I want to get your point of view. Maithili has got a very strong point of view, and so does Ketan Dalal here, and so do I, if I may say so. What's your own sense on what explains such abysmal tax compliance? Is it, there is this thin line, sort of that divides evasion and avoidance. Are tax laws too grey? Is there too much of scope for ambiguity, too much of scope for interpretation, and does that sort of explain why we have such poor compliance when it comes to the rich in this country?
Well, you see, the question is, what you are asking is compliance level and the taxpayers. But if you look at the statistics, I suppose before me the panelists must have already pointed out, only 1,08,000 individuals are paying 98% of the tax of the country. 1,08,000. Can you imagine a country of 125 crore people, 1 lakh taxpayer? Why do we need an income tax at all on an individuals who are below 1 crore rupees income? So abolish Income Tax Act. Subramaniam Swamy has been correctly saying that you abolish Income Tax Act for 5 years or levy the income tax beyond 1 crore rupees and then strictly adhere. Unfortunately, what happens, these all people who are paying taxes on an income beyond 1 crore rupees, they are subjected to the scrutiny every year, and then therefore they feel harassed, and there is a corruption, and these people don't indulge into the corrupt practices, and because they don't indulge into the corrupt practices, their assessments are disturbed. So therefore, people after having reported correct income also feel they're cheated. Lower strata of the people, they don't pay the taxes, so therefore there is no problem for them, so they feel they have done something, but then their cases also picked up for scrutiny. Few cases are picked up for scrutiny.
Right.
Now the question is salaried class.
Right.
You look at the dismal the figures.
30,000.
I think we must compliment first of all to the government that for the first time this report has come within 2 years, and I'm sure the government should present this report within a year. Because everything is electronic, format is fixed. Why should they wait and watch for the purpose of this report? And on the contrary, some of the analysis which are required, which should be added. For example, how much exemption people are claiming, how much deductions people are claiming, and because of that, is there any need to remove all these exemptions and deductions and reduce the rate of tax? Now the pressure on the government is bound to be there because America is reducing the rate of tax. Today Senate is approving the bill, and Japan has reduced the rate of tax to 20%. We cannot remain in the isolation that we will not reduce the rate of tax.
Okay, you made a very good point, and I want to take that to the CBT chairman. Is it time to take a relook at the exemptions, the extent of exemptions? Is it time to simplify the tax code to improve compliance? Is that going to be the key task before the panel that's now working on a complete reboot of the direct tax code? Mr. Chandra.
For continuously, I think for last 2 or 3 years, you might be seeing, since this government has come, that there is a war on black money. We want to simplify the tax rate so that the exemptions can go and the tax rate can come down. Last year also, up to the turnover of 50 crore, the corporate tax was reduced from 30% to 25%. So 96% companies were covered under the low tax regime. So once the exemptions goes off, exemptions are petered down, the tax rate will automatically will come down.
Okay, comment on that, Ketan Dalal, on the need to relook at all these exemptions, on the need to, everyone's very hopeful that there is a committee that's been tasked to revamp the entire direct tax code. We've seen, game-changing reform on the indirect tax with the GST, and people are hopeful that something will happen on the direct tax side as well. Do you believe the time has come to relook at these exemptions, to just redraw it from scratch?
You know, Sandeep, this entire discussion about exemptions being withdrawn, I think I would not agree with the thought process that the exemptions need to be withdrawn, because as Mr. Chandra said, majority of them have been withdrawn anyway. We don't have too many exemptions in the last 3 years. In fact, as you might recall, about 2 or 3 years back, just after the new government came into power, there was a talk that we would reduce the tax rate, as Mr. Chandra said. Yes, the tax rates have been reduced for certain categories of companies, and I'll come to that in a minute. But the majority of exemptions have been removed in any case, except for let's say an SEZ exemption for business assessees. So majority of the exemptions have anyway gone, and what you're seeing, as I said, is a 2.5-year-old report or 2.5-year-old statistics, and if the March 17 or March 18 report is released, I think the picture may be different. So that's one point. On the tax rates itself, I just do want to make one point, taking advantage of the fact that we have Mr. Chandra on this panel. You know, the tax rates have been reduced for companies, but they have not been reduced for LLPs and partnership firms. And I think there is an issue there, because the majority of taxpayers in terms of numbers would be partnership firms, LLPs, you know, the small and medium enterprises. And when you have a higher rate of tax for them, you know, you are in a sense encouraging tax evasion. Sure. I would strongly urge that the tax rate be reduced to bring it in line with the companies, the smaller companies, because so I think that itself might increase the tax base.
Okay, need for moderate taxes. We've got another caller. We've opened the phone lines for our viewers. The number is on the top of your screen where you need to call in if you've got a point of view or a question for a panel. Rajkumar from Bengaluru, he's a chartered accountant himself, is calling us with a solution. Go ahead, Mr. Rajkumar.
Yeah, sir. First of all, I'll congratulate you to take up this kind of very good, excellent programs.
Thank you, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah. See, I have a simple solutions for the tax to make the number of taxpayers maximum or optimum. One of the solutions is that every adult should be made compulsorily to file a simple return, whereby his income, expense, asset, and liability is disclosed. So thereby, anything above like certain limits, like 40 lakhs income is there, he has to disclose further details. So this will make one is tax evasion will come to the lowest level, almost zero, what I can say is mission zero. And the other side is that even people who are taking the freebies, being properly having income also,
okay,
that will also reduce to the lowest level.
Okay.
Because once you made the compulsory filing. Number two solution, can I take 2 more minutes?
Quickly, Mr. Rajkumar, if I may interrupt you, let me get a reaction from my panel, because I've got some other callers as well. You made an important point.
Only one more solution I'll tell you.
Sure, very quickly.
One more solution is the tax checking by the tax officers should be reduced to 1 year. It should not be like 5 years they keep harassing. The people who are honest also, who wants to pay the tax, let the tax officers check it within a year and close the matter, and let them focus on the productivity rather than getting into the history digging and making them harassment. What I say is that.
Fair enough. So you made two suggestions, one on the tax administration side and one sort of really path-breaking move, so to say, if every individual above the age of 18 has to disclose his return compulsorily, showing his income, asset, liability. Mr. Oswal, you want to take that? Is that workable? Is that feasible?
I don't think it is workable, but anyway, this is already there under the law. Those whose income is beyond 30 lakhs or 50 lakhs, as the case may be, you know, there is a compulsory requirement of disclosing asset, liabilities, and all the assets and liabilities and the financial statements in the return of income. Now, to make it compulsory for all the taxpayers all over India, first of all, people are not filing the tax return. Employees, you see, the employee sector who believes that their tax is deducted at source by the employer, and therefore they don't have to file the return, and they are not filing the return. That is the reason why our number is very low. Correct. And second thing, they also believe that since that is the only income required to be reported, if they have interest income, their other incomes, they are not reporting such income. So the evasion is at the maximum in the even salaried employees cases. So therefore there is a need that make everybody file the return, whether you have lower level of income or exempted income or below taxable income. File a return. Now everything is computerized. Don't pick up these cases for scrutiny. At least you will get a correct statistics. Everybody will file the return and the people will get the statistics, and these reports which are generated by the CBDT, we must compliment them that having taken the effort, and in fact this compliment goes to this government. Sure. They have this is the third report they have published. Absolutely. Fantastic job they have done it. We must appreciate, and therefore this type of report will generate more and more interest and debate, and that will give more solutions. Possibly it will improve, and later on the mining of the data will be done better by the CBDT.
Okay, you made a fair point, and everyone should be forced to file returns. This push factor should be there for everyone. Okay, I want to pick up a point that Maitri made at the start of the debate. Ketan had a different point of view, but I want to get the view of Mr. Chandra from the CBDT. Is there a case for some sort of a stronger deterrence, to crack down on tax evaders? Do you think there's a case for a stronger deterrence to avoid tax evasion, Mr. Chandra? What is your point of view?
That is our job. Basically, we want to be absolutely tax friendly, but whenever we find that there is a case of tax evasion, intrusive actions becomes very, very important. And our investigation wing conducts various surveys and searches, as well as the other officers, the field officers. But the technology is very important. That is why I want to tell that through the technological data and the third party reporting system, we are getting a lot of data of each and every assessee. And in our computer system, we analyze the data. And when we find that there is a large amount of the tax evasion, the investigation wing takes the enforcement actions. And we also file prosecutions against those persons who have really evaded the taxes in a large amount. And during this year itself, we have filed so far something around 2,000 complaints against various assessees who have not filed their tax returns and who have not paid taxes correctly. So we will have to have a very dual approach, that we are facilitator as far as the common man is concerned, as far as the honest taxpayers is concerned, but definitely the department have to take a strongest actions of the enforcement when we find a large amount of tax evasion with a particular assessee.
Okay, I'm sure Ketan has a point of view, but I want to get in a quick comment from you again on a point that you made, and our viewers will be curious to know, how does this third-party surveillance work? I mean, are you tracking purchases of air tickets, holidays, etc.? How does it all aggregate together? What is the sort of information that the tax department today has that probably didn't have a few years ago, that allows you to look at potential tax evaders?
We have got large amount of third party reporting system in which banks, traders and mutual funds, properties, if you are buying anything beyond a particular threshold, that is reported to the income tax department. And with our 360-degree profiling data, we match all the information which comes to our possession with the return which you have filed. If you have filed a return which is absolutely commensurate to that, then definitely we do not take any action. But if you have not filed a return, or your income is not commensurate to the investment which you have made during the year, those cases are picked up for scrutiny and other enforcement actions.
Maithili, comment on that. It's good to hear the CBDT sort of use technology, and you were making this point as well, because eventually, in a few years from now, and with other steps being taken by the government to formalize the economy, it's going to get increasingly impossible for people to. Is that the only way we can fix this problem? Sort of look at third-party tools to, look at purchases made by people, whether it's a mutual fund, whether it's a holiday, whether it's a car, and then obviously consolidate all of that and use that intelligence to track tax evaders.
Well, it's a bit of that certainly, but I think along with that, it's very important when it comes to payment of tax, the carrot and stick approach is used. So wherever it is possible to incentivize people to pay their taxes, that would help. At the same time, whenever you do see evidence of any tax evasion, avoidance is perfectly legitimate activity. But whenever you see tax evasion, government must crack down. And this is where I think GST is going to be a big, big enabler, apart from technology, because the advantage with GST is that it leaves an audit trail. Anybody will be able to claim input tax credit only if he submits an invoice. Now, the moment you submit an invoice and claim input tax credit, that means you're automatically giving scope to the idea that yes, you have that much of income, you can no longer hide your income. So this is why I think GST is going to be a great bump up, not only for indirect taxes but also for direct taxes. So I think technology along with the GST, along with simpler tax laws, will definitely improve compliance. At the same time, strong deterrence and strict punishment wherever you see clear evidence of tax evasion must be punished, because remember, in the case of the US, many years ago, Al Capone, the notorious gangster, he was put behind bars not for the various murders that he committed perhaps, but for avoiding taxes. Now, if we have that kind of a situation in India, where honest people can pay their taxes without fear or favor, and the dishonest ones once they're proven that they have not paid their taxes, are severely, there's a crackdown on them. I think that would be the answer, along of course with making tax laws simpler so that it becomes easier for those who wish to comply.
Okay, Ketan Dal, very quickly, I need to take a quick break, but I want a quick comment from you on this carrot and stick approach. It's important because I think there's no fear of the taxman. How do you ensure that there is this fear of a taxman, fear of the fact that you can't get away if you evade, and yet you don't want a hostile tax administration, you don't want quote-unquote tax terrorism to happen in this country, and you don't want an honest taxpayer to be inconvenienced. How do you find that balance?
So I think, Sandeep, first of all, the point that there is no fear of the taxman is itself not correct, in my view at least. And I think there is a fear of the taxman. There is no doubt about it. I think the issue really is there is a greater fear of getting into the tax net, as I said. And I think from that point of view, and let me give you an example. You know, we have seen this newspaper reports today itself of this so-called angel tax. You know, when startups are being subjected to an issue of saying, okay, the amount of share subscription which has come in could be subjected to income tax just because, let's say in one case it was like that, so the balance 99 could be subjected to that level of scrutiny and, if I might say, investigation. It frightens people. That's one point. Second, the point which you made on the compliance and the deterrent. You already have, as Mr. Chandra said, prosecution provisions under a section called 276C. You have, concealment penalties under 271(1)C. So there are enough and more deterrents. I think the issue really is that people who are just not paying, evading completely, yes, they need to be brought into the tax net. But I think that in the carrot and stick approach, we cannot use the stick so harshly and on interpretive issues that it frightens the others. So I think a carrot and stick in a balanced sense would work much better, I think.
Mr. Chandra, the one good news in all this is that this data is, of course, before the rollout of demonetization and before the rollout of GST. Both that many believe, including experts in my panel, were disruptive reforms that could significantly improve compliance. What is the CBDT's own view on the impact of both demonetization and GST, likely impact on tax compliance?
Definitely, GST and demonetization both have helped in increasing the number of taxpayers. Because by demonetization, we have done a lot of work in the demonetization, and we found that the money which was stashed at home or in the unaccounted accounts have come into the mainstream, and that anonymity of the money has gone. We analyzed that particular data under our specially launched scheme, Operation Clean Money, and we identified large number of new taxpayers through that. And even we have found that many persons who did not file the return, in spite of our continuous SMS, emails, we have sent them notices. And this will definitely increase our number of taxpayers. And while GST will come into this picture, if GST has come and more returns are filed, then naturally the number of assessees in income tax department will increase.
Coming on that, Mr. Oswal, what's your own sense? And I think, the media has been very critical of the government on both demonetization, to some extent on implementation of GST. But do you believe that these are two transformative reforms that could change the landscape when it comes to tax evasion in a couple of years?
100%. I have no doubt in my mind that these two reforms which the government has taken, these are very bold steps, requires a courage, and genuinely it requires 56 inch ki chhati. And this Narendra Modi has done that job. And let me honestly tell you, demonetization was one of the most important steps, as Mr. Chandra rightly said. It has identified the number of taxpayers. No doubt people have used all the techniques of converting the number 2 money into number 1. But nevertheless, it has already started giving impact, and it will really eventually give the impact subsequently in the next years to come. GST, major reforms, I think the world will have to emulate what India has done it, and people will follow. Possibly you can see after 2 or 3 years our successful experiment, US will be implementing. US may think of changing sales tax to similar type of tax, because that is another country where federal and the state taxes are there, and they have difficulties, similar difficulties like we had. And they will also start thinking, because I was talking to a treasury man in US, and he said, we are waiting and watching your experience, what is happening in your country.
Sure. Maitri, come in on that. As an economist, it's important to tell our viewers, even though GST may be an indirect tax, it will have a significant impact on direct tax collections as well, because of the way of the design of the GST. For anyone to avail of input tax credit, he will, for years we've seen, individual businesses underreport income in order to evade taxes. That cannot happen anymore.
Well, absolutely. In fact, that is one of the biggest advantages of the GST, because not only does it make the entire country one single market, and also it removes a cascading of taxes, but at the same time, precisely by ensuring that, because in order to claim that import tax credit, you would have to kind of give a bill, you would have to prepare an invoice. Now, the moment you do that, you are automatically admitting to having undertaken either a purchase or a sale, and that would ensure that you cannot hide your income. So, both demonetization to some extent and GST to a much larger extent leave people with nowhere to hide. So, which is why, apart from the indirect tax collections going up, direct tax collection should also get bumped up, and that is why we are hoping that ultimately in the country, direct taxes should always be a larger proportion of the tax kitty than indirect taxes. This is because direct taxes tend to be progressive, whereas indirect taxes are regressive in the sense that everybody pays the same tax. Whether you are a mochi or a cobbler on the street, or whether you are a rich man, the indirect tax rate would be the same, whereas direct tax rates are progressive. So, from the point of view of equity, you need to have much more of your tax income coming from direct taxes than from indirect taxes, particularly from the distribution angle. So, with GST, it is hoped that direct tax collections will also rise, and in the process over some time, because we have been seeing a slightly regressive move in the sense that our indirect tax kitty has grown much faster than the direct tax kitty. Right. We need to correct that imbalance, and this hopefully will happen with GST. Also, if we have the direct tax committee submitting its report and ensuring easier, simpler tax laws.
Okay, Mr. Dalal and Mr. Oswal want to comment on that. Mr. Dalal, you go first, and then I'm coming to Mr. Oswal. Very quick, I want to take a viewer caller as well. Mr.
Yeah,
Dalal.
very quickly, you know, this, I think this formalization of the economy that is taking place as a result of both demonetization and GST is, I think, very, very good. And as Maithili said, and I want to add to that, she talked about the invoice. I also want to add the point that it is not only that the person has to generate an invoice, but there is a digital trail. And that digital trail will make people comply. To my mind, there is no doubt in my mind that that will happen. So, I think the only other point that I want to make is that given the fact that there is now an automatic push, so to speak, towards formalization and therefore filing returns, maybe the CBDT might want to consider making the people who are otherwise now required to file a return feel a little more welcome, little more comfortable, so that they don't get intimidated by the thought of filing the return. I think that softer dimension is something which is significantly more important than what might seem to be.
Sure. Mr. Oswal, quick comment.
Apart from what Maithili said, if you look at under the GST, now manipulations for tax purposes become impossible or difficult. Your purchases are recorded, there is a GST payment, your sales are recorded, there your gross profit margin is known to the income tax department from the GST records, and therefore your expenses all are subjected to GST, and therefore all, even if you want to manipulate some expenses, the GST will have to pay at 16% or 18% or 28%, and therefore that will be also recorded, and it is easy to catch what manipulations you have carried out, and therefore everything is under a systematic approach, and it can be verifiable. Once it is verifiable and your profit therefore margins are clearly known, what business people fear possibly, if these data are used to look at their assessments in the past years, that will be deterrent, and therefore the government has assured it will not be doing that way. Hitch hunting will not be done. Another important factor possibly is these GST records will help the government to find out those service providers who are not in the net. Now, these figures we have got, all the figures CBDT has given, all the type of professionals, type of businessmen, every number of people are there in the country. I was so shocked and surprised to see such a small number of the advocates, doctors, lawyers, chartered accountants who are subject to the tax net. Number is very low.
Absolutely.
And therefore, this will open up the eyes of the people, and the taxpayer will automatically be identified.
Okay. I want to take one quick caller. We need to wrap this quickly. One quick caller. Venkateshwar Rao calls in from Hyderabad. Go ahead, Mr. Rao, with your question.
Yeah. During the demonetization period, we found a lot of customers depositing more than 2.5 lakh cash. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of customers depositing 2.5 lakh cash. It's almost 1 year over, and I thought that there should have been significant increases in income tax revenue. In fact, when I just checked that 2011-12 to 2016-17, there is a compounded growth rate of only 8.88%. I feel that if we can explore this data from the banks with a strong business analytics team, I'm of the opinion that we can easily do a 20 to 25% growth in income tax revenues without any difficulty.
It's a good point you're making, and I can tell you the government is looking at that. Mr. Chandra also spoke about it a short while ago and said that demonetization is, in a sense, given a lot of black money and address which it didn't have before, and over a period of time they will be able to use that to improve direct tax collections. It's a very good point you've taken on board. I want to get closing comments from my panelists, and let me go to Mr. Chandra first for his comment on the other sort of GST. Of course, is going to have an important impact. The other thing is mandatory linking of Aadhaar and PAN card, Aadhaar and bank accounts, for filing IT returns. What kind of a transformative impact will that have? I know there is an anti-Aadhaar lobby that's working overtime to stall this, but just purely from the point of view of nabbing tax evasion, how transformative could this be, Mr. Chandra?
Definitely, because we have found that certain persons have taken duplicate PAN accounts, and once the PAN is linked with Aadhaar and all bank accounts and the financial transactions are linked with the PAN, then it will be very, very difficult for a tax evasion, because everything can be easily tracked down, and that will be limited, that nobody will be in a position to evade the taxes easily. So that is a very important step, that we have linked Aadhaar with PAN, and PAN linking with all the bank accounts in where even now they have not been linked.
All right. 30 seconds to each of my panelists. One thing, I'm starting with you, Ketan Dalal, the one thing that you believe the government should do to dramatically improve tax compliance among the individual assessees. I'm not talking about corporate assessees, but among individual assessees, the one thing that the government should do to dramatically improve tax compliance.
Well, Sandeep, it's difficult to say one thing, but a couple of things. One is, as I said, this softer aspect of making them not feel that they will be hounded. Second is lower tax rates. And third is the feeling and actually changes in the law to make sure that things are closed within a much shorter time frame. I think one of your callers said, can the assessment be done within 1 year? I think things remaining open frighten people. So I would say these three things.
Okay, Mr. Oswal?
You see, the problem, as Ketan said, apart from that, what is happening today in this country is so much of an activism from the tax department. Assessments are made, they are delayed. First of all, 2 years time period is given, too much. Then thereafter, they do it all at the end of the 2 years, and then they reopen the cases. You see, number of reopened cases are so huge, and litigations are because of that. Why can't there be, if the assessing officer has not assessed completely correctly within the 2 years time frame which was given to him, why there should not be any accountability of the assessing officer? Sure. You bring an assessing officer's accountability, automatically things will, the softness will come automatically in the tax system. Okay. Today, everybody, all the tax assessment or assessing officer takes a view that make a mistake on the revenue side. Okay. Because he is subjected to C&AG, he is subjected to vigilance. But you see, the question is, why should you be worried about, if you are saying the taxpayer, if honest taxpayer, why should you be worried about the tax system or tax officer? Okay. The officer is worried because he is subjected to monitoring. Sure. And he is worried why? Because of the bad practices he must be doing. Sure. So let's have an accountability to them also.
Okay, accountability for the tax department as well. Maithili, quick last word.
Yeah, simpler tax laws, a more friendly and approachable tax administration, less interface, and most of all, I think we need to move our slabs up progressively as inflation and income levels rise.
All right, Maithili and Mr. Oswal and Ketan, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure Mr. Chandra has taken note of all these suggestions made by all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Chandra,
thank you so much, and I'm very happy to say that you are launching that campaign, and I wish with this campaign the persons of India should come more into tax net, and they should develop a habit of being tax compliant. Wishing you all the best for the same.
Thank you, Mr. Chandra. We take your wishes on board, and hopefully we wouldn't need to do this debate a few years from now with all these transformative changes, GST, demonetization, Aadhaar linking, a more friendlier tax administration, and of course the fear of the tax department, lower tax rates, all of this coming together will lead to better tax compliance, and that in turn will help the country move forward. Thank you so much, gentlemen, and Maithili ma'am, for joining us with your perspective on the India development debate.